appreciate the invitation here from the Open Ukraine and the other organizers to share with you some of the public opinion data we have from surveys we and others have done in Ukraine about economic conditions, about perceptions of corruption, issues that obviously plague this society and many societies today. Briefly, I'd like to defend, if I could, public opinion, because public opinion research is under attack in many parts of the world. To lead off, public opinion is a snapshot of the public's emotion about a set of issues at a given point. Those of you who are consumers of public opinion should read the question carefully to see if you think it's biased in terms of its question. You should look at the methodology to see how things were done. If they're done by computer online, they're probably not as good as if they're done face-to-face or even by telephone. And make your own judgment. But we firmly believe that good public policy comes from good information. And one of the sources of information for making public decisions has to be what the public believes and thinks and wants. That does not mean that the public is always right, but we do know that the public votes on emotion. The public, and you know better than we do, the public goes into the streets on emotion. And so those of us who are assembled in this room, and I think by definition, you are all elites by some degree or the other, or you wouldn't be here, have to understand that public opinion is a vital part of a functioning democracy. And as a result, we must take into account the public's views in informing public policy decisions. I believe we actually have some slides to show you. Briefly, the Pew Research Center is based in Washington. We're funded by the Pew Charitable Trust, one of those wonderful old American foundations. And the foundation is very committed to the fact that understanding public opinion and listening to the public is the way to inform public policy. I don't need to tell you, Ukrainians here in the audience, that the public has a very dim view of economic conditions in this country. 2/3 say the economy is very bad, and another nearly 3 in 10 say it's somewhat bad. I can tell you in the 40 countries that we survey, this is some of the worst opinion about the economy in the entire world. So things are fairly bleak in terms of the perceptions of the public. An even more recent survey that was just done in February by the International Republican Institute in 22 Ukrainian cities found that a plurality in each of those cities believe that the economy is extremely bad. So there's no doubt that the public has passed judgment on this economy. It's a negative judgment. I would point out to you, however, that even though people don't have great hope for the economy over the next 12 months, that by 2 to 1, Ukrainians believe that the next generation will be better off than the current generation. 48%, a plurality, say that they believe that the next generation will have it better than the current generation. That's a degree of hopefulness you don't find in Western Europe, and you certainly do not find in the United States. Now, it's all relative. It's not nearly the kind of hopefulness you have in Vietnam or China. So all these things are relative. But I do think that there is a good sign in the sense that the Ukrainian public does believe that over time, economic conditions will get worse. A second hopeful element here is that 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds in Ukraine believe that the next generation will be better off than the current generation. That means the millennial generation has real faith in the economic future. And that's the kind of thing one can build upon. Now, I must admit that only 42% of people my age think that the economy in Ukraine is going to get better. They seem to have given up on the future. But the reality is that the younger generation still has a great deal of hope about Ukraine's economic future. One of the challenges facing both Ukraine, and I again would emphasize this is a challenge we see in Western Europe and in the United States, and that is a low degree of faith in institutions. Notice that 76% of the public thinks that the court system have a bad influence on the society. 59% of the public thinks the government, the national government, has a bad influence on society. No matter how you ask this question in the West, you get some of the same elements. We have very low support in the United States. Only 13% of Americans have a favorable view of the U.S. Congress. Only about a third of Europeans have a favorable view of the European Parliament. So we in the West, and in this case I would include Ukraine in the West, have lost faith in the institutions that have long structured and driven our societies and moved public policy. And I think that is a broader challenge than simply dealing with the economy or with corruption. Corruption, of course, though, is a huge problem. 63% say it's a significant problem, and 28% say it's somewhat of a problem. That means that 9 in 10 people think corruption is a problem in Ukraine. If you ask it a more focused question on nepotism, again, you get huge majorities who believe that nepotism is a problem in the society. Part of this panel is also to talk about what can be done to help Ukraine. When you ask Ukrainians, they want economic aid from the West. I think that's probably not terribly surprising. 7 in 10 would support that. 2/3 support joining the European Union. Over half would like to get arms from NATO. About half would like to join NATO. I think it's useful to compare that Ukrainian sentiment with what we know about Western European and American sentiment on those same questions. Roughly a comparable part of the Western publics in the US and in Western Europe would like to give economic aid to Ukraine, 70%. I must point out it's only 62% in the United States, so it's a little bit lower, but not significantly lower. But only half of the Western Europeans we have surveyed want Ukraine to actually join the EU, and that varies wildly by country. So it is something to watch. And on the question of joining NATO, basically there is support in Western Europe for and NATO countries for Ukraine joining NATO. Again, it varies wildly by country. Only 62% of Americans support. I say only, actually it's pretty strong. It's better than the NATO average. Support Ukraine joining NATO. But I can tell you there's a great division inside the United States by political party. Republicans are much more supportive of Ukraine joining NATO than are Democrats. So again, it's not a straightforward issue. On the question of joining the EU, as you can see, and this is from data from the International Republican Institute, the Russian invasion of Crimea had a huge impact on Ukrainian public opinion joining NATO. Almost overnight, support in Ukraine for joining the EU jumped up. It's to a point where by 3 to 1 in September of 2014, the Ukrainian public wanted to join the EU. I think this reflects a number of factors, not only the Russian invasion of Crimea. We surveyed in Ukraine and found that 61% of Ukrainians believe that trade creates jobs, and 50% believe that trade raises wages. I can tell you that almost no one in Europe and absolutely no one in the United States believes that. So Ukrainians are much more hopeful or have greater belief in trade and the impact of trade on jobs and wages than do Americans or many Europeans. I would warn you, though, that we also ask Ukrainians about foreign investment. And obviously, One of the things Ukraine wants from membership in the EU is greater European investment in Ukraine. 46% of Ukrainians are against foreign companies buying Ukrainian companies. This is not atypical. In fact, it's relatively low compared to the opposition in places like Germany or Japan. But the point is that there is not a great deal of support in Ukraine for one of the fundamental elements of joining the EU, which is allowing more foreign investment by European companies in the Ukrainian economy. There's a divide, as you might expect, on joining the EU inside Ukraine by region. It's a huge divide. If you compare Ukrainian public opinion on joining the EU versus customs union with Russia, there's no contest. Basically, people want to join the EU. All of this material and much more is on our website. It is free, but more importantly, it is searchable. And as a result, you can compare Ukrainian public opinion on these issues to opinion in Western Europe or the United States, or in Russia for that matter. So, thank you.